Welcome to today's webinar, another TechSoft Venture webinar, Making Your Education Stick, Tips to Leverage New Tools and Technologies. Before we begin, a little bit about your technology. Your lines are muted for the duration of the webinar, but we encourage you to ask questions at any time through your question box. Type in your question, we'll queue them up and answer as many as we have time for at the end of the presentation. Now, a little bit about our speaker today. Lezlie Osborn, veteran educational professional at TechSoft Ventures. She has over a decade worth of training experience, extensive knowledge in the software education space. Recently did a SAP education project with over 600 users and a WMS rollout utilizing Manhattan Associates software. And with that, Lezlie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alan. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to ask you, has creating and deploying worthwhile training ever made you feel like this? The water is rising, yet you keep trying to come up with new ideas and strategies. Today, you can go ahead and wave the white flag because we're going to share some surefire ways to create education that sticks for your learners. First of all, make education at your company all about your company, your processes, your workflows, your data needs and reporting structures. Education out of the box typically isn't going to meet your standards. Provide education that matters to your users, something they're going to use every single day, and teach them their jobs in the new environment that you're giving them. Reduce lecture time, capitalize on the hands-on structures and scenario-based conversations. And we live in, work in, and play in a technological world. Did you know you can educate in that world also? You might be surprised how media can enhance training, and we're going to look at some really neat technologies about that today. And finally, empower your users with knowledge and the day of the training, but also make sure that they have means to access those materials after the classroom training. Excuse me. We have a few learning quips that we're going to go ahead and reference several times today, and I'm going to share those with you right now. In the top left-hand corner, let's go ahead and look at a quote from Mr. Jack Welch. He said, "An organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage." In other words, well-structured and designed education makes learning easy to apply. In the bottom left-hand corner, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And I think every one of us can tell by the way that that's written is probably a Chinese proverb. So what that means is adults, we no longer have that tabula rasa. Remember that from back in your first year of college, right? Our brains are no longer a blank slate. We need to make the new knowledge transfer in our minds, we need to make it in our muscles, and we need to make it in our routines. And the last learning quip is over to the right, and it's from George Burns. And he said, "Hey, by the time you're 80 years old, you've learned everything. You just have to remember it." I'd like to share with you a quote from a healthcare professional who said, "The software implementation company trained us on the generic software, but it is bloated with stuff that isn't pertinent to our primary care and how we work." And this substantiates Jack Welch's quote. An organization must flip their training into real life or into action immediately, or the value is sorely diminished. Again, I tell you, if education is taken straight out of the box without any attention to your company's needs, that action by your users is going to be very hard to attain. This is some information from a case study. A healthcare organization actually made an EHR conversion, and significant training materials were provided, again, by the implementation company, and they actually had two results. They had a good foundation of the EHR software, but there was no customized training, and so they were not able to realize that action that Jack Welch talked about. So the users were very dissatisfied. So here's your tip number 1. Be customized. What do you want and need your education to teach, look like, to ensure? We're going to show you some great ways to customize your education by using technology tools like CodeBaby or BrainShark. And we're going to get to those later on in this presentation. But they are fantastic ways to utilize asynchronous learning in your organization. So many organizations to this day train by rote. You learn it from somebody else. Or maybe you beg, borrow, and steal from another company. Okay? It's kind of like wearing somebody else's shoes. They might be the right size, but they really don't fit. Companies using out-of-the-box education or vanilla education often suffer. So don't settle. Take on the challenge. This is another article taken from Healthcare IT News. Healthcare providers said, show me how to do this in my day-to-day life, okay? Go ahead and tell me, this is what you do now, this is how it's different. Build me a bridge. Show me an analogy. Make this make sense to me. The healthcare provider in this particular article said you have to provide the right resources in terms of equipment, technology, education, and training. And it's a huge undertaking. But this journey of change prepares them for other changes in the future. Because that's a reality, isn't it, everybody? Change is always happening. But if you learn to handle it correctly and educate and make those bridges of knowledge for your users, action is, again, is easy to attain. Tip number 2, make education actionable and applicable. Your users hear that they have to go to education or they have to go to training. And their first question is, what's in it for me? How is this going to make me better? How does this improve my day? Am I going to be quicker? Am I going to have better statistics? Is our productivity as a department going to increase? Am I, as a healthcare provider, going to be able to spend more time with my patient, which is what I am trained to do, instead of sitting at the computer? Tip number 3, and you all know this, hands-on. That's just how we learn as adults. And healthcare professionals are some of the most hands-on, quick-thinking, fast-paced users there are. So consider this when you're doing your education. Minimize the lecture time, maximize the hands-on exercises, maximize the talking, the scenarios, this is what happens in real life. How would I handle that in this EHR system that we have today? And always consider matching their tempo. And again, this is where some of the technology tips that we're going to look at in just a minute are going to help you, because they're going to be able to fit it into their day, fit that education into their day. Another healthcare professional talking about EHR education said, EHR is one of the most essential components in today's technologically advanced healthcare environment. You know it. Education is the best way to make it a reality, though. And at this particular organization, they believe in delivering powerful, expert-level training, which will enable healthcare practitioners to advance patient safety, reduce medical errors, improve those outcomes, and enhance efficiencies. And those first 3 are really what you're all about. Patient safety, no medical errors, improved medical outcomes. And when your users understand their systems and are engaged, those office efficiencies are going to improve just naturally. So tip number 4 is entertainment. All right? Edutainment is big. We talked about how I do and I understand. Well, sometimes you got to break up the energy. Sometimes you got to break up the variety in educating adults. So I want you to consider the following things like CodeBaby. like extra normal, like brain shark. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of those right now. Code Baby is actually the use of avatars, which can be completely customized. I mean, they walk and they talk, and you can determine how you want them to dress and what you want their hair to be like. They change their facial expressions and gestures, as you can see by these slides that I'm going through. Extra Normal has great graphics. As you can see, we can see the whole entire office down to the little pictures and diplomas on the wall. These voices are very techno, and these can be very entertaining and educational. I'm actually going to show you this live. There won't be any sound, but this is actually an associate who is talking to the account manager about some training that they need to do for how to do their expense report. And I just want you to watch it for a few seconds. So do you see how that might be entertaining and change the energy level in your classroom or for your users? The last technology I'd like to share with you is actually called Brain Shark. And a Brain Shark is very simple to use. It's actually a PowerPoint with voiceover. So the voiceover can be as black and white as you want it with just one person saying everything that needs to happen, or you might actually have 2 or 3 people and somebody's adding color commentary or asking questions. And again, these are just a PowerPoint presentation. Now, all of these are asynchronous learning. They're deployed whenever your users can get to it, and you can go ahead and attach deadlines to these. Many of these actually can be sent via email so that they can access them whenever they want. And they're all completely trackable as to when somebody signed in, how long they watched it. If they only watched it for 5 seconds, you can be pretty sure they didn't get the entire process, right? These are great ways to go ahead and say, this is what we've been doing for 6 months. This process is going to change. Instead of calling everybody into a classroom to do classroom training, you can roll these out. And when it's time for that new process to take effect, everybody has been trained and is ready to go. I'd like to share with you actually some statistics about some asynchronous education that was done with healthcare providers. Nearly 1,000 providers were required to access education whenever their schedules permitted. There was actually a deadline, and there were repercussions attached to not meeting the education requirement. All of the providers have their own usernames, and they have their own passwords, and all of their activity was trackable like we talked about before. Scores and feedback showed great success using this asynchronous education. 2 weeks before the education time frame ended, there was a 91% completion rate. That's huge with healthcare providers. I want to call your attention to the yellow bar that shows that 74% was the pre-assessment score. The post-assessment score was 97%, showing that there was a 23% improvement in the assessment. This education is actually going to be used by this organization for their new incoming providers, and they've left it as available reference in case providers were like, I can't remember how to do that. I'm going to go back into this system and I'm going to look at this. which supports George Burns, who said, you just got to remember it. So if you can't remember it, you got to have a place to go find it. Tip number 5, make education attainable. Set your users up for continued success. If you have the ability, go ahead and have a training environment or a sandbox available in your EHR system for them to go try out new processes and new ideas. If you're using BrainShark or CodeBaby, go ahead and link those up on your intranet so that folks can go ahead and access it at any time that they need to. Print materials if necessary. Regular quizzing and testing might be something that your organization can benefit from. And as always, as you know as managers, celebrate statistic improvements. So hopefully we've given you some ways to make education stick and get you out of that flood that you're in. Use advanced tools to create custom authentic education. Help your users turn education into action by engaging them, by entertaining them. Improve your education belief by making all of your education materials accessible at any time. And it's your turn.
Thank you very much, and we do have a number of questions that have come in. And while we're doing that, we'll launch a poll. If you would like additional information, this is a confidential poll. Simply respond to the poll that's on your screen, and TechSoft would be happy to provide the information. That might include the PowerPoint presentation, a conference call on this topic or another topic. You're welcome to suggest a future webinar topic. And a couple of people were asking where they could hear the video with the YouTube link. And if you reach out either via email or to Kathy Swank, they'll make sure they get you that link, and you'll be able to hear the synchronized graphics and and audio at the same time. That was the first question. The second question is, what are the costs associated with these types of programs?
Actually, many of these programs have different levels of costing associated with them. I know that BrainShark actually has a free. That's where they start out at. So you just need to go ahead and get onto the World Wide Web and check them out.
Thank you, and I know costs are difficult to answer, but we appreciate that. The poll will close in a moment. If anybody else wants additional information, please vote. It'll close after the second question. How long does it take to use or learn how to use the avatar-type programs you showed?
I would say that if you actually have an IT department, that them learning how to use those and create that information is not going to take any time at all. We actually have IT people that create those avatar communications for us.
Another question that came in, Leslie, is the classroom no longer a valid teaching environment?
You know, that's an interesting question. If you read articles that talk about adult education, it's still viable, but probably not as viable as asynchronous learning and the hands-on learning. And that's what we've gone to as a company is a lot more of the hands-on, the scenario-based, the day in the life versus just the lecture, because people are busy, and it's all about in healthcare, it's all about those patients. So there's lots of opportunities to do asynchronous education and still get the results that you're needing.
And this is probably a good follow-up to that. Several people have asked, and I'll try to summarize, how can their companies know if the training is sticking or working, and what are the suggested ways that you would recommend to measure it?
I think probably the most beneficial way is your pre-assessment and your post-assessment. Not only do you see that as a manager, but your associates see it also. And when your users see that they have learned something, definitely they are going to put that into action. And assessing probably is the best way to know that I have learned something and I have gained knowledge here.
Well, thank you very much, and we thank everyone for attending. If you want additional information, you can reach out to Kathy Swank. Her phone number is 239-963-9698. It's on your screens right now if you look. Or Kathy.Swank@TechSoftVentures.com. Or you can simply reply to any email that you receive for this webinar, and somebody from TechSoft will get back to you. We'd like to thank our presenter today for a very educational topic, and look for more succinct and educational topics relating to training, implementation, and rollout from TechSoft Ventures in the very near future. With that, we thank everyone for attending, and we hope you all have a great day.